Welcome to Umbrella Rebellion. I'm Marcy.
And I'm Dee.
We are finding healing after leaving a cult.
We will be discussing abuse and personal experience with the ATI, IBLP, and fundamental churches.
Trigger warning. This podcast may contain descriptions of various forms of abuse. Please take care for your safety and well-being while you are listening.
If the content becomes too much for you to handle, please turn this off. We hope to expose harmful teachings that lead to and justify abuse,
with the hope that those that are experiencing abuse can find support and escape from it.
Welcome to Umbrella Rebellion. Hey, Marcy.
Hi, Dee.
We are actually in the same vicinity, location, building, house, mine.
Yes, we get to record together.
I know. So Marcy flew into New Orleans yesterday, had a very long day. We were going to try to record yesterday, but that totally did not happen. So we are going to start bulk recording a bunch of episodes so I can get them edited and scheduled. So we will be in the same outfit for a couple of episodes, and that is why.
This is why we're doing bulk recording.
So we were doing the mental health series, and we are going to continue with that. Our next topic of discussion is going to be spiritual abuse. So just like we went through the verbal and the emotional, and then we had also the financial, there's also specific key factors to spiritual abuse that we definitely want to cover and talk about. And this might be a two-parter, right? We were talking about that, or there's a kind of a different topic.
I think, yeah, there's a secondary topic to it, but we'll probably put that in a different episode because part of the spiritual abuse, there was PTSD and PTSD. So we may put that in a separate episode.
Okay.
That
so
way it's not too long.
All right. So we're probably going to cover PTSD and CPTSD in an additional video that also kind of correlates with all of the abuses that we've discussed. So again, we are going to be reading off a document because we want to make sure that the information we give to you is going to be accurate and relevant. And we are not professionals. So this is not our wheelhouse. So we don't want to give false information.
Right.
So, but we want to get the information out to our followers and to those who may be trying to help others in a abusive situation. All right. Well, Marcy, you want to start us off?
Sure. So the key feeling to look for with spiritual abuse is shame. So that's the biggest one. But shame, obvious at times, but less apparent at others, and can be experienced in many ways. Spiritual abuse can be recognized in many of the following situations, but is not limited to these. So these are just going to give you ideas of kind of maybe trigger memories for you to see to kind of ascertain whether it's spiritual abuse for you or not.
And they may be at varying degrees. So a lesser degree may not necessarily be abusive, but if a higher degree may be abusive in these situations. So,
Yes.
Or if you don't experience all of them, but some of them maybe a little abuse, maybe not. I don't know. So, and we're going to kind of discuss like where we see the line of it going from teaching spirituality and teaching religion versus religious abuse or spiritual abuse. So We'll go into that a little bit as well. All right. So we're going to do just like the other ones, bullet points of different things that could be present that could indicate abuse is present. So if you feel ashamed when you or your partner have different thoughts about religion, like Jeremy and I, we have two different religious backgrounds. We agree on some of the main points, but we do have differences, but neither of us make the other person feel like they're wrong for having their beliefs. So there's no indication of shame for believing differently.
Second would be, can you challenge your partner on their beliefs? So like you were saying, Dee, with him, I don't have experience in this, so I can't speak to it, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, so we've had discussions of like Jesus and his teachings and his ministry through the Bible, like how we both view those things. And we'll ask questions like, okay, well, why do you believe in that? And, what made you come to that conclusion? So it's not necessarily I guess it could be a challenge. Like I'm challenging what you're believing and I'm discussing what I believe. And, can you have that open discussion about your beliefs without shame?
Yeah. With kindness and respect.
Yeah.
Well, it's about his kindness and respect. The third one is, do you feel it is not safe to challenge their ideas about religion? So there's the key. Is it safe
Right.
to challenge them? Or are you required to stay within their realm?
Right. Is it
Yeah.
their way or the highway? Right.
Yes.
We discussed that
We
yesterday.
did.
Okay. So if you've ever been silenced by your partner when challenging a common ideology in their religion. So I guess maybe for the Christian fundamentalism, a lot of the belief is that the King James Bible is the only Bible. And can you challenge them on why they believe that? Or if you're coming out of it and you don't believe that anymore, can y'all have a discussion and challenge each other on what interpretation of the Bible you believe in? So I guess I'm not sure I like that word challenge in this point. This,
Yeah, I'm beginning to be like, maybe not the right word.
yeah. So I think for the intents and purposes of what we're trying to get out, we can change that word to discussion, because that's a good dialogue to have about the way things are worded.
Yeah.
And that we don't like the way that this is worded. Because if you're with a partner, are you really challenging their beliefs, or are you just having a discussion about it? And I don't think that if you're in a partnership, there should be a challenge. Like, I don't know. I just feel like challenge indicates contention and arguing more than a discussion, which is just openly discussing it.
Right.
So, words have meaning.
Words have meaning. They do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. You could change this from a partner to even family members. So
Right.
in that case, it would be a challenge.
True.
Like, because I have had moments where my parents came to me and I had been expressing a different viewpoint than them coming out of the cult. And I said, I don't believe that anymore. And they challenged me with it. They said, they silenced me. They said, we don't want to hear about that. We don't want it to be that way. And they did try to silence me, especially when I was first coming out. So in that situation, then it might be applicable. But if in a partner situation where you're trying to just have common ground, maybe not. But particularly with parents or coming out of the cult, that might be more appropriate,
I guess. And it just depends on your situation. You could have to challenge your partner if there was a shift in beliefs while y'all are together. So I guess it does apply. So,
and I know friends that have come out of the cult after they were married. So they married within it. And then as both of them grew over time, they were both coming out of it at the same time, but together. And so that would be applicable there too, where you're both coming out of it. You're both trying to learn. You're both trying to heal. And then you've got to recompare what you think now as to what you knew or thought you knew when you were first married and still in the cult.
When you express your thoughts or opinions, do they call it silly, wrong, or stupid that leads you to feel ashamed for having the audacity to think differently? So definitely when you express your feelings, it should be a safe place, an open discussion, and not like, oh my gosh, that's so ridiculous, right?
Right. So I've had lots of discussions with friends who didn't agree with me in the religion department or the spirituality department. And we had really good, really fun discussions and say, oh, no, this is what I think. And no, this is what I think. And there was no shame in it. It was just to learn what the other one thought. And they were iron sharpening iron. We learned things about each other. We learned things about it, refined what I thought. Like it gave a better point of, it helped me talk through that. But there's also other conversations where I tried to do that with parents or people out of the cult, and that didn't go well.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it can go both ways.
Right. It definitely can. So y'all don't know this yet, and Marcy hasn't been able to watch it yet, but I did record an episode with my friend, my very best friend that I've had for a long time. And this kind of ties into this. Can you have a discussion about different beliefs? And I am looking forward to y'all being able to watch the dynamic between me and my best friend of 25 years. I don't know. It's been a long time. So yeah. And we kind of touch on what Marcy was saying, like being able to have differences of opinions and still be friends and like sister friends, So
it is possible. It's also possible to lose friends.
Yes,
I
it
have
is.
had long-term friends that I've lost because I've expressed those differences or those changes in opinions. My opinions have changed. They've morphed over time, and I've lost friends over it too.
Yeah.
So have you ever been forced to attend religious gatherings? So as a child in the cult, that was just expected of us in the family. We didn't have an option. We couldn't say no, because then, you bring the wrath of God down on you.
Right.
But we also had this discussion in the car the other day.
Yeah.
Where was the line with our children? Like where we felt we were overstepping the line of giving them choice, but also keeping it in the family as far as this is just what our family does.
Teaching versus control, right? Like
Right.
what is teaching and acceptable that's not abusive?
Right.
Right. And we kind of discussed, like, I don't pray over my meals anymore. That was something that we did religiously every single meal. I feel, my personal belief is, I feel like it makes it not as special if you're, it's more of a rote prayer to me, but that's my personal beliefs. And some people feel like that's their daily connection and conversation with God. Right. So I think it's because I had experience with someone who did that daily, and there wasn't I don't know. It just seemed it was all ritual and not actually meaningful. So it wasn't something that I forced, and it wasn't something I did after probably a year or two after leaving my ex-husband. And as far as church attendance, something I can't do. It triggers me every single time. And so I've not found a safe church. But my children are allowed to go if they want to. They have the choice. Other people choose to go to church every day and bring their kids. And, maybe there's an age to where you let them decide. And I think that's important, that at a certain age, it has to be important to them for them to continue. Then I think that's when it becomes control versus teaching, right?
Which is kind of what I agreed was, well, okay, so if you're going to pick when you let them decide what to not join the family in the family traditions and what you do. So I do like to attend church when I can. I'm not religious about it. I don't go every week, but I wouldn't mind making that a part of our life eventually. So what would I require of my children? Well, my children are 5 and 7. They're small. They have to go where I decide they go.
Yeah. They can't be left at home, right?
They don't have a choice in that.
Yeah.
But also the churches that I was choosing to go to, the kids are, confirmed at 12 or, somewhere around there. So I was like, okay, so maybe you give them the choice at 12,
Yeah.
And let them decide whether they want to go. Or we do pray over our meals, not every meal, but particularly the evening meal, because that's the meal that I've chosen to kind of say, hey, this is our family coming together time, and we're going to check in with one another, and we're going to do some healthy, emotional check-ins. Like, how was your day at school? Was it bad? Was it good? We do what was good about our day and what was bad about our day.
That.
And that just helps us be more of a unit as a family. Praying over the meal kind of just starts that off. And so we don't do that all the time, probably not over breakfast and lunch. We definitely don't do that necessarily when we were out for a out to eat meal. Because when I was a kid and we were part of the cult, that was like a witness. You did it every time because people would see you and then they would ask questions, and then you would have an open witness for them, which really bothered me.
Yeah.
Still does. So we don't particularly do that when we're out sometimes, but if my kids instigate it, I'm not going to shut it down.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's kind of like, if that's your choice and you want to do that and it's important to you, then you allow it. Right.
Right.
So,
and I allow them to pray. So I say, okay, who wants to pray over the meal today? And maybe the 5-year-old does. And it goes something like, thank you for the day and for the food. And I really want a puppy dog. And then we're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like we were talking about, giving a choice to pray or not, and not, okay, well, it's your turn. You're on the hot seat, and they feel pressure to do it. Yeah.
Or it's always dad's job, or it's always mom's job, and
right.
Yeah.
The cult and the always dad's job, and dad was the intercessor for you between God and you. Umbrella, yes, but you had a direct line to God somehow when you weren't around him. Okay, we're digressing into the cult and triggering memories. Okay. So it's a reminder, if this gets too much, please turn us off. We're okay with that. You don't have to watch us. All right. So the next point that we have here is being shamed or punished by, the other party, whether it be family, partner, for not obeying a particular religious rule or set of rules. So like if you were told to pray and then you got reamed out because you didn't feel like praying, yelled at by your parents, or sent to your room without dinner because you weren't being grateful or whatever and praying. Punished for not attending churches. You can't go out with your friends if you don't do the Wednesday night service, Sunday night service, whatever.
So my experience in that would be that if you're shamed or punished. So I was not punished, but I was definitely shamed for following certain religious rules. So when I started getting out of the cult and started wearing pants, they tried to keep me in line with that by either having me, I had to change at the Quick Trip when I left. We've talked about this before, or severely shamed that my siblings were going to fall away from God because I didn't follow that specific thing. So I would say that probably falls under something like that, would fall under spiritual abuse.
Yeah. And along with that is being shamed by other church members because you missed a service. I was shamed because my husband didn't attend with me. Well, where's your husband? What has he been up to? I'm like, I'm not his key. I'm supposed to be the submissive wife, and you're asking me why my husband's not here. Why don't you call him? And so I didn't want to go to church without him. I wanted to go to church, but it was very hard for me to go to church without him, especially with the boys. Once we had the boys, because I would be grilled about why my husband wasn't attending. And so it's like they don't want you to gossip about your husband at church, but then they ask you pointed questions about why they're not there. And you either have to come up with a lie or an excuse or gossip and tell them the truth. Well, he was too high today because he's, snorted his pain meds in the bathroom. I could tell you that, but then I'd be called a gossip, or, oh, he just wasn't feeling well today. Why are you putting that pressure on submissive wives to be accountable for their non-existent husbands or backslidden husbands? And there's so much pressure for you to put that holy family, perfect family that it gave me so much anxiety just to go to church without him because I knew I was going to get grilled and I hated it. So it wasn't very welcoming at all. Like, I am so glad you're here. And like, don't even mention my husband because at least I came.
One of the biggest struggles I had coming out of the cult was the spiritual abuse. So I couldn't hardly step foot inside a church without having some PTSD symptoms like phone.
Now, I'm so sorry. I forgot where we were.
I think I was talking about church and PTSD.
Yeah.
But I'm not really sure where I was going with that. So I've left my brain now.
Sorry about that. Don't know what track of thought we were on. And I'd have to stop the recording, go back, listen to it, and then get back. So we're not doing that.
Go to the next thing.
Yeah. All right. So.
All right. So next one is, does your partner use scriptures, religious texts, or beliefs to justify harmful or abusive behaviors?
All the time he did. My ex. It was like the one thing that he did was, hold on.
I feel like this specific thing is what is used to keep women in their place as submissive wives.
Yes, for sure. Because without the scriptures to justify, pressuring you to be submissive or listening to your husband or listening to your father as a young woman. I mean, I think this is the key in keeping women in line and subjugated is scriptures. I mean, they can't justify doing what they're doing without using scripture or twisting scripture to justify being misogynistic and patriarchal.
If you're being silenced or shamed, that's the key right there. That's probably abuse.
Yeah.
That's probably them overstepping their bounds. If they're listening to you and you have to and you're coming to a mutual agreement, that's a partnership.
Right.
That's
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it points in the relationship, there is a point where you have to yield sometimes as a wife or as a partner when it becomes shame and they're using scriptures and they're twisting scriptures to get you to do what they want.
And like it completely changes the sound. It's ridiculous.
Marcy's being ADD today and I'm moving.
I took my meds. I'm good. I'm chill. And I had 2 cups of coffee.
Well, and I've had like 3 or 4 this morning, 4 cups. So yes, okay.
Yeah. All right. So that was the scriptures. So, and then if you are in a partnership, does your partner insist that the children be raised according to a specific faith, even if you don't follow it? And I guess that would be in a marriage as a child. So in a marriage, obviously partner forces the children, but also as a child, are you being forced to follow one parent's religious beliefs over the other, or are they just sharing their beliefs with you and you get to decide? So
Spiritual abuse perpetrated by parents, not always obvious or blatant, can be seen when parents encourage single-minded thinking, when parents discourage questions or shut a child down for challenging what they learn. They are teaching the child that critical thinking is not valuable. So, example of that, my children went to a little Bible class after school at their elementary school. It's not a Christian school, it's a public school. It just happened to be something they offered and I allowed them to go. They came back with some really challenging questions. They said, why would God was so mean? He did this horrible thing with Noah and the ark and the animals, and he killed all those people. Did he really kill all those people? And
oh wow,
it really made me have to say, okay, so let's look at this.
right?
But not just say, oh, but that's the way it is.
Right.
And we really did have a critical thinking conversation about, well, yeah, that seems like a really mean God.
Right.
And that seems horrible. And, we had to really come to terms with that in a 5 and 7-year-old way.
Right. Age appropriate conversation.
Yes.
Because I'm sure that's shocking. And I've heard so many posts and stories on survivor groups where those kinds of things, when you are so little, being discussed completely changes the way that you operate, because you completely operate out of anxiety and fear of all of these things happening to you because your little brain can't process it, right?
Yeah. And that's what my 7-year-old was doing. She was saying, this is a really mean God. And he says, if you obey, bad things don't happen to you. And if you don't obey, then he kills everyone.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, hold the train. We don't want that kind of thinking. I don't want her. I said, I think what I ended up landing on was, honey, that is not the God that I believe in. I believe in a God that loves you and that loves people and does everything in his power to show you the right way to live and give you opportunities, and he has grace. I said, the story you're listening to is Old Testament, and he gave those people many, 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 many chances to change, like over 120 years, which they don't share in those Bible stories.
Right.
So I said, he gave them many chances of grace. It wasn't just a one and done thing, which is what her 7-year-old brain was thinking.
Right.
And so I explained grace in that story, but we really had to have critical thinking there. So I didn't shame her for asking questions or just say it was a Bible story or shut her down. We really thought it through, and we thought, and I had to answer some hard questions, and I had to come back to her a second time too. I had to think about it for a while because I just took that as rote learning when I was little. Like it just was what it was.
Right. Yeah.
We didn't question it, and we weren't allowed to question it, and I allowed her to question it.
Right. Which is important. Excessive language can be used, an us versus them mentality, when referring to those who do not adhere to the same religious group. This language serves to give children a pointed message about the organization of social relationships and can encourage both an entitlist mentality or a savior complex. And this is not just parents that do this. I've had religious leaders and the cult leader of the fundamentalist Baptist sect that I was in was very good at doing the us versus them. And I shared on a podcast, I don't know if we've posted it or not, or I shared somewhere recently. I don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast or not, that I went to Peter S. Ruckman's IFB church for their blowouts. And a lot of his preaching was directed at the difference between Catholicism and fundamentalism. And I am from a Catholic background. All of my family was Catholics, other than my parents and one other uncle and his family. And so it really upset me the way that he talked about Catholics, because that was my family and they cared about me and I knew that. And so it was like, if you were a Catholic, you can't be a Christian. And it's like that, it was so ridiculous. And it should have triggered something then, that something's wrong with us, but it didn't. And I do discuss this with my friend Lisa in our podcast about how I started adopting that thinking that other religions cannot be true Christians, because they don't follow what the fundamentalists do. And that's the us versus them. It's everybody else is wrong and we are correct. And it's like, look at the United States. How many interstate systems do we have from how many states? If you think about Christianity from each person being at the end of one of those roads, right? And they all intersect and intertwine and have offshoots and everything but a lot of them will converge onto one point, right? So we have many systems that will come into one point, and that is for the, I guess, sake of this, what do you call it the word I'm looking for, illustration. For this illustration is like the midpoint would be heaven and Jesus and going into eternal life, right? So, but every person has such a different experience from the time that they're born to the time that they've traveled on all of these different roads, that it's not going to look the same for one person starting at the East Coast or one different religion, or the West Coast of the United States or a different religion, right? But it doesn't mean that you're not all working together towards the same endpoint, right? So it's just, you can't think of it as there's only one road. Well, how do you get to that road, right? So you have to get to the road first, right? So it's a different trek for every single person, and it should be okay to have a different road that you travel down.
Yes. So I was going to relate this back to my experience, one that I specifically remembered when I was 12. So this is when I was processing. This is when we really got into it full hardcore and into the cult hardcore. And when I was really processing why we believe what we believe. And something happened with the neighbor. I think it was over rock music. And we were supposed to ask the neighbor, if we were in the neighbor's car, we were supposed to ask them to turn it off if it had a rock beat.
Wow.
Right. And so I had asked the mom twice to turn it off, and she kept asking me why. And so I just spouted the rhetoric that I had been taught, that the rock beat and whatever. And she said, no, I'm going to listen to my word. This is worship music. This is Jesus music.
Oh.
It's good music. She said, it's not bad. And I said, well, yeah. So I was trying to explain it to her in my 12-year-old way.
Right.
So it didn't work. She didn't turn it off.
Yeah.
So I went home and said, hey, Mom, this is what happened. I did everything I was supposed to do. I asked her to turn it off, whatever. And she said, well, some people believe that, rock music is okay in their worship and that's what they believe, but we believe this. And I said, so are they wrong? Very black and white thinking. I said, so we're right and they're wrong. So how does that work? If they're Christians and they think they're listening to Christian music, but we don't believe that, are we better? And so what happened was that's what I internalized. So I spit that back out at her. And I said, but you're saying, logically speaking, you're saying we're better than them. That we have a better road to Jesus than them because we think we have a stricter viewpoint. And she said, well, not really. But so it really challenged her to think, okay, so this is what my children is internalizing. This isn't how she had processed it. It was how I was spitting it back out as a 12-year-old. And she was like, you could see she was visibly uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
But she was so far into it that she just couldn't process that out. And
right.
It was a big deal. It was a defining moment.
Yeah, for sure. It should have been her cue that something's wrong
that
with
should
this.
have been her red flag that something was not quite right with these views. So the next one is stifle a child's interest in learning about other religious practices. This often furthers exclusive language by sending the message that others might be dangerous or evil. So we thought anything outside of our very strict views was dangerous. Like it really was going to take you away from God or make you fall. We weren't allowed to learn about anything else outside of that. Very sheltered, very
like everything would be like going to downtown New Orleans in the French Quarter and it's just full of sin and debauchery, right?
Yes. Exactly. It's a sin and debauchery tour.
So if you haven't checked us out on TikTok and you don't know what's going on in this recording, you should go check out TikTok because we've been giving you little sneak peeks to Marcy's visit to New Orleans and we're calling it the Sin and Debauchery Tour. So once you've told all of your siblings who told you this and you've gotten all of their reactions, we will be able to reveal that her mother was worried about her coming to New
She
Orleans.
did. She said, but you do realize that New Orleans is a pit of sin and debauchery. And I was,
Pit.
a pit. It was a pit. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we
I
can.
said, Mother, it's a town just like any other place. People live there
Mhm.
normally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you be a Christian in New Orleans? Like, I was like, okay. All right. So, like, what does that make her think of me who lives here? Like,
I think specifically she was thinking sin and debauchery in relation to Mardi Gras. And I said, maybe during Mardi Gras, Mom, if you engaged in all of, I don't know. I mean, I kind of want to go to Mardi Gras at some point, but maybe not engage in all that it has to offer. But
yeah. Like, I guess she was thinking specifically Mardi Gras in the quarter or something where people are just, flashing themselves and drunk and yeah. So,
but that applies to the whole year and the whole town. It doesn't. It's just I don't know. But
yeah.
yes, we had a good laugh about it. So that's
hilarious.
It became an inside joke.
Yeah. All right. So force
Yes.
a child to participate in certain rituals such as prayer, worship, communion, bowing, group participation, repentance, public displays of adherence, etc. Like we talked about a lot of this, the public prayers and when you're eating out and stuff. A child who does not wish to participate likely has a reason. And parents who ignore the child's choices send the message that children do not have the freedom to make their own choices, which is extremely the whole point of the cult was groupthink and make you question every single thing you did.
And I think that really does also depend on the age of the child. Like if that's how you want your family traditions to go, then teach them your family thing. Talk with them, and if they resist, or if they say I don't want to do it, like figure out why. Like have an honest conversation. Don't just require it of them. Like pretty much give them a voice to say what they're feeling, what they're thinking. Like let them use their critical thinking, and then maybe walk them through that. Okay, so the last point is force a child to remain in an environment where a traumatic event occurred. Children who have an extreme reaction to religious environments typically do so for a reason. Parents may be unaware of a traumatic event that has taken place, but to ignore the child's reaction instead of attempting to discover the reason for it is likely to teach the child that they cannot expect to be protected from harm even by their parents. So this would address abuse in the church. Also, just like we said before, let them have a voice, ask them why, see, just really kind of and believe them. Believe them, acknowledge that their emotions are, and that, resistance is, there's a reason for it.
And just because they have an issue or they have questions about someone in authority, or they don't feel comfortable with that person, does not mean that they are rebellious. And that is a lot of what the churches say is if you are a teenager and you are coming up to me as a leader and you are questioning me, or you go to your parents and you question, well, this happened and this happened, and I'm just wondering. And if you say, well, if they had, ill will towards you, they wouldn't be in leadership. And it's like, well, no, that's not the way that works. And just if a kid says, hey, this, I'm not, or they could be acting out and resistant to going. And if you just keep forcing them to go to church, you may be putting them in a situation where they're being harmed, whether it be physically, mentally, or emotionally. And you just want to protect your kids from that by allowing them the space to process whatever it is and come to you about it. And if you don't give them a safe place to share even the hard things, you may not know what they're experiencing. And if a child comes to you, whether it be a female or male child, and says, someone is hurting me, you don't ever let your child go through those doors ever again. And because unless the church deals with the abuse in a proper way by getting the authorities involved, if someone has physically, mentally, or emotionally harmed your child, I don't think that church deserves your presence ever again, because they are allowing abuse and hiding it if they do not alert the authorities, and if they try to deal with it in-house and are just making people move from one church to the other and allowing pedophiles and abusers to walk in the church or preach from the pulpit.
Mhm. Yeah. Children often sense things off of people. They're more sensitive to that than adults. And so being considerate and aware of those perceptions from them is important. And sometimes that's hard because they're kids. But
Mhm.
they usually can sense that off of people too. Like, I don't know why
Yeah.
this person makes me uncomfortable, but they make me uncomfortable. Honor that, even if you have no proof any other way. If my girls came to me, I get vibes off of people like that
Mhm.
more easily maybe than sometimes other people do. But if my children come to me and say, we really don't like them, we really don't like that teacher, we don't want to be around them, I honor it, because usually there's a reason for it, even if they can't express it.
Right.
So
They may not know how to define what they're feeling either.
yes, yeah,
Mhm.
they may not have the words to tell you why, but honor it.
So this is a story that I read. I think it was Thriving Forward. She is a survivor of Bill Gothard's abuse, and she was one of the defendants in the lawsuit. And she has come out publicly, and that is why I'm sharing this. If you want to go read her story, she has a Facebook page, Thriving Forward, and she describes her story. So I was reading her story not too long ago, and I believe this is her. So I may be wrong about who it was, but it was one of the survivors that had the story. And she said that there was an instance where she went to her parents or her siblings, or I think it was her parents, and said that Bill Gothard was rubbing her feet underneath the table. And they didn't even believe her. Like, he must have done it on accident. There's no way that he was doing that on purpose. He's Bill Gothard. And had they believed their child, and not that anything would have been done about it, but if they would have gone to the board and then removed their child from that position, that child would never have been subject to more abuse by him. So, even if it looks like it might be an accident and your child is saying, this made me feel uncomfortable, accidents, even if it was an accident and it made them feel uncomfortable, it is okay for them to not be comfortable around that person, you know? So, they talk in this article or this source that I've gotten to, they're describing like when you, as a parent, have a child that comes to you with questions about your morality, your spiritual beliefs, explaining to them why you hold those morals is more important than you forcing your morals upon them, so that they can come to an understanding of your reasonings and allowing them to come to their own reasonings and own set of boundaries of their own morals. I'm dealing with that a lot right now with a 16 and 17-year-old. My 16-year-old does not believe anything that I believe. And the only time that he respects the boundaries I've put in my place is because he respects me as a person. And it's not because he holds the same beliefs, but he knows he lives in my house and he can sometimes respect me enough to follow the rules, sometimes not. And sometimes respect is not enough motivation for him to not partake in something that he believes is not wrong. That's hard. But that doesn't make my child wrong. Hopefully, it doesn't land him in a bad situation, but I can't control that either. And if he does, he'll be dealing with the consequences and teaching them that hard decisions and bad decisions lead to bad consequences. I want them to learn that as early as possible. I hope it doesn't get to the point where they're dealing with something that is going to affect them the rest of their lives. But I explain to them that this has the potential to ruin the rest of your life. You may not want to do this, but ultimately it's up to them to make that decision whether they want to go down that road. And right now they have a safe place to land because they have a mom that cares about them. In a couple of years, it's going to be all on them. So do I want them to learn these hard lessons where they have a safe place to land and I can help guide them to a better path? or do I want them to learn this in 2 or 3 years and the consequences are far greater?
I think that's really the key right there,
Mhm.
because growing up in the cult, we were expected to have blind obedience. We were
Mhm.
not allowed to question. We couldn't understand why. It was just what it was. It was black and white. These are the rules. This is what you do. Don't step out of line or God will, get you. And I think what you're explaining with your teenagers, what I'm trying to do with my children, is to give them critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
So that also I think this keeps them safe from any other
Yeah.
people that come after them, that it keeps them safe from abuse of any kind,
Yes.
of
Yes.
any way, shape, or form, because they'll be able to logically think it through. Okay, so this is what's happening, this is what they're saying, and is this really true? It
Mhm.
helps them find truth. I really feel like the cult didn't, it gave us what truth they wanted us to have and said swallow it whole. It didn't give us
Mhm.
opportunity to think it through and decide. Didn't give us freedom. That's something that God gave every person at the
Right.
beginning, the freedom of choice.
Mhm.
And we weren't given the freedom of choice in that cult.
No.
We want to give our children the freedom of choice.
Absolutely.
This is what we believe. We're teaching you what we believe. We're teaching you the logic to get there. And that's really,
Yeah.
I think, what it comes down to is just
And
critical thinking and choice.
Yep. And that can apply for spiritual, religious beliefs in parent-child relationships, partnerships, friendships, is allowing the other person to have different beliefs
Mhm.
and not judging them or making them feel bad about them.
Mhm.
And my goal is to live my life according to the morals that I have. And if somebody wants to have the same morals as me, because of my example, then fine. But if you don't, it's not for me to judge. And I am so beyond and so done with judging other people for their choices and their difference in morality. It's not even funny. I'm just like, they have to answer to God. I'm not responsible for their choices. And to some extent, we're responsible for our children until they're adults. Will we ever stop caring? No. But at some point, there is absolutely nothing I can do to stop them from making bad decisions when they're not around me. And I'm not about to go chasing after my teenagers to make sure that they're not going to get in trouble like I did when they were toddlers. No, you learn, if you want to learn the lessons the hard way, learn the lessons the hard way. I did.
Yeah.
I mean, they came from me. So what can I expect? No, they're not going to be these robots that do everything I tell them to because they're my children.
Rebels. Rebels, both here. And what do we expect of our children? They're going to be, they're going to, rock the boat a little bit because, they came from parents, from mamas that have a little bit of a rebel side and question things, which is what I want them to do. I want them to question things.
Because then they're on solid footing if they come to an understanding of it and believe that themselves, instead of always questioning, well, why do I believe this? Because nobody ever gave me a good enough reason or a logical answer, So, yeah. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. And we hope that you are enjoying the mental health series. It will be continued. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, do all the things. And also, Marcy,
come join the rebellion.
All right, y'all. Have a great day.
Bye.